Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in for another video. Today we're going to be talking about the subtle differences between Shimano's DC reels and why I keep telling people they're not all the same. So before we dive in and start talking about all the differences between the Shimano DC reels, I want to talk a little bit about what DC actually is first. So the DC stands for digital control, and that is basically Shimano's computerized version of the braking system that they have here. It's something that's not really new to the market. They've had it for many years now, mostly in the mid to higher end tier reels, and they have started to actually bring it to some of the more affordable options. So essentially the DC is just basically a microcomputer inside the reel that measures the speed of the spool to apply the right amount of braking power, so that way you don't have any backlash in your spool. So one cool thing about all the DC reels is that the microcomputer basically reads the speed of the spool at about 1,000 times per second, which is crazy. So not only are you basically stopping it from preventing any backlashing, but you're basically getting the most amount of casting distance that you possibly can with using the DC system. So what is the biggest thing that you get out of the DC? And I think for me, at least as anglers, and especially tournament anglers, you don't get backlashing if you set it right. And yeah, you can kind of say the same thing for some of the other reels that offer different braking systems, but the adjustability on this thing is just so much easier. They have basically Shimano has made it super simple in order for you to tune it, so that way it's on the go, quick and easy, and you don't actually have to open up any side plates. The new Metanium DC this year, they've basically wiped out the reason to open up your side plate like some of the other ones like the Exsence DC. So you can make that quick adjustment on the fly just by using external controls. So one of my favorite things about the DC reel, besides the fact that it's super easy to tune, is that you can definitely chuck your lure in the wind and not have any backlashing issues. And if the wind dies down, you can definitely just, tune down your reel, your braking on it. If the wind picks up, you can obviously just increase your braking system on here and you're good to go. So the adjustments you can make on the DC on the fly is like phenomenal, especially for these reels, because everything can be done externally with these. Most of the time, you're not going to really fuss with the internals for the Exsence or Interiors DC, just because your line type is probably going to be the same. You're probably not changing out things right, on the water. And if you do, you can obviously open your side plate. But this external braking system on the Exsence DC can do it all. It's very, very powerful. It's very smooth. And so it could definitely, one click can definitely do wonders compared to something in a different package, like something like an SVS Infinity braking system, which requires, internal brakes and also the external adjustments too as well. And the DC reels can definitely help you broaden your range of lures. Something like a Metanium DC, I find that this reel is very, very versatile when it comes to casting lighter lures and even some heavier lures. I've casted anything from 3/16 all the way up to ½ ounce just fine with just making a couple external adjustments on the Metanium DC. So something that's really cool, and again, that's what I really love about these DC reels. Now there's a lot of different DC reels out there too as well. These are just two of them right here that I have. This is the 2024 Metanium DC, and this is the 2022 Exsence DC that I have here. Some of the other really popular DC reels that most people have are probably going to be the SLX DC and the Corrado DC, which are very, very budget-friendly reels. The Corrado DC is kind of at its peak right now. They definitely need to come out with a new one. It's been several years since that reel has been out, but it still is a really good performer in today's market. But to say that the Corrado DC is on par with the Exsence DC or something higher like the Metanium DC too as well is just not fair. When you compare something like the SLX DC to a Antares DC, Exsence DC, Metanium DC, you do have to consider the fact that there are going to be different build qualities when you talk about the reel itself. Something that markets at $100 is not going to have the same quality parts as something as a reel that's in the $700 market. So you have to understand that there's going to be some big differences in terms of the performance and quality parts that are offered. And again, it's not to say that the SLX DC or Corrado DC are not good reels. They're phenomenal for what they are, and they definitely work. But if you want to enjoy a more pleasurable experience and you definitely want to fish the top of the line and you want to get the best performance possible, definitely this is going to be something that you really, really want to get into. But again, if this is like your first option into getting a DC reel and you kind of want to know what it's about, those are some really, really great options. Even these two reels here that are different in price point but are on the higher end of Shimano's scale have way different types of tuning. The Exsence DC has an internal system still, which offers 4 different adjustments on the internal and also 8 external adjustments. So it's a 4x8. A similar reel to this is going to be the Antares DC, which is almost identical. However, the biggest difference is that the Exsence DC, Shimano claims, has a Exsence DC tune, so which makes it a little bit different than your normal Antares DC. If you haven't seen that video, you can definitely watch click the link in the description, as I did compare the two differences between the two reels. But the big thing about this is that you have the ability to have that 4x8 adjustment. So you get 4 internal braking settings, which basically compensate for the line type. And then you get the 8 external dials to basically fine tune the actual braking system. Whereas the Metanium DC, you have everything external. So you have the 3 main lines for basically braid, fluoro, and monofilament. And you have your 5 adjustments at the top for minimum and maximum amount of braking. So you do have different adjustments, and the Metanium DC is definitely going to be a newer braking system compared to something like the Exsence DC that came out in 2022. So this is Shimano's most updated DC version. And I think we're going to see more of this because of how well this performed. And so I think Shimano is going to knock out a couple reels. They're going to bring up a couple reels, and they're going to put this DC system in it. The other thing you have to also compare, again, we're talking about the different DC reels, is obviously the weight. Something like a Crowder DC weighs a brick compared to something like the Metanium DC. Now, the Exsence DC is on a little bit of a heavier side when it comes to the reels, but that's because it is basically, I don't really want to consider a compact reel. I would say that the Metanium DC is more compact. This, of course, is, I guess, to industry standard, considered a compact reel. However, this is pretty big and heavy compared to the Metanium DC. However, I do feel that the Exsence DC is a far superior reel. It is definitely a little bit more durable. It's a little bit heavier, but it is smoother. And I've had this reel for a longer amount of time, and I've already noticed that the Metanium DC is getting a little bit grimier after beating it up for like a whole year compared to the Exsence DC, which is just buttery smooth. So going back and talking about some of the other differences in the DC reels, the Exsence DC and the Conquest DCs are the only 2 reels that also offer that clicking drag. Something that some people like and some people don't. It is more of a preference, though. It is not a performance related thing. So it is something that if you like or not, it doesn't really matter, because it really doesn't affect the performance of the actual reel. The spool sizes can also have a very, very different effect on these reels. Looking at the Metanium DC, this is a size 70, and the Exsence DC, I would imagine, is a 150 size. So you get different spool sizes, which do also affect the amount of casting and different types of casting distance you get, and also castability in terms of lure range. And so that is something to consider when you're looking at these 2 different types of DC reels as well. So going back to the individuals that say that you can buy like 7 SLX DCs for the price of one of these, I mean, you can, but again, the biggest difference is that this is going to outperform those any day of the week. And so, and not to say that those are not good reels. Like I said, those are great entry level reels. But if you really, really want to get into the pinnacle of the DC, and you really want to fish with a lot more performance, and you want longevity in your reels, this is definitely the reel, because they have just better quality components. Overall, too, these reels are all designed for different types of things, and you have to consider the spool size. Like I said, you also have to consider the weight of these too as well, and what they're really geared towards. Like the Exsence DC is only available in a high gear, so it's definitely not available in something lower than a 7, whereas the Metanium DC, you kind of get a little bit more variety in your gears, and the Crowder DC is a phenomenal one too as well, that has a little bit more variety, because something like this is only offered, again, in high gears, and versus something like the Crowder DC, which has a little bit more variety, especially if you want to throw other things like crankbaits, swollen baits, and you don't really want something that's super, super fast like the Exsence DC. But overall, I think Shimano has done a great job with their DC reels. It is something that's continuously to improve. I have had DC reels for quite some time, all the way back from the Scorpion, and Scorpion DC was actually my first DC reel, and then I've actually picked up the Crowder DC. I've had an SLX DC too as well. but I really, really like these more than I do the other ones. The other ones are definitely workhorses. However, I just prefer to pick these up because they're just a lot smoother. They cast further. They're easier to adjust. They have more adjustability too as well. So I could just do a little bit more with something like this or the Metanium DC. But I'm really happy with the DC system. I think one thing that was a lot of people are skeptical is the maintenance behind it. And to be honest, it's so simple to maintain. It's very rare that I would ever come across a DC reel that has problems internally. Yes, they could get a little grimy and you might have to oil it and grease it up once in a while, but I've never had a bad experience with the DC reel myself. And maybe I'm just, maybe I should knock on some wood, but I just haven't had that problem. I've never had a DC system ever go out. So I really love these things, and I think Shimano is doing a great job. Daiwa is starting to try to get into that market. They just released a reel, I want to say within the last year, that uses a computer system of its own too to kind of basically do the same concept as the DC system. However, I don't think it's there yet, nor is it at an affordable price point. That reel is pretty expensive too as well. And so kudos to Shimano for obviously bringing some of that high-end technology into a more affordable package like the Crowder DC and the SLX DC. But yeah, if you guys have any questions about the DC system, let me know. I just wanted to make a video to clarify a couple things. I get a lot of people saying that, hey, why would I want to get something expensive like this when I can get something a little bit cheaper and give more of it? But again, fish what you can afford and definitely have fun with it. You could definitely have fun with all these reels that I've talked about. They're all phenomenal reels, but I just want to obviously point out the no-brainer in the comments to say that, this is not the same thing as something in the $100, $200 range. So if you guys are big fans of the DC system, make sure you guys drop a comment below. Let me know what your favorite DC reel of all time. There's been a lot so far, and a lot more is coming. And make sure you guys click that like, subscribe button. It definitely supports the channel. And again, everything that's on my channel is self-funded by myself. I don't, none of this has been sent to me. I buy this all of my own money. Shimano is not sending me these reels to test at all. So please support the channel by clicking that like and subscribe button. Other than that, we'll see you guys on the next video.